High above the Peruvian desert, where the earth looks dead and the silence feels eternal, enormous shapes begin to emerge from the sand, lines so vast, so precise, and so unnatural that they can only be understood from the sky. A hummingbird longer than a jet. A spider stretched across the desert floor. Endless geometric runways cutting through one of the driest places on Earth. For centuries, they remained invisible to the human eye at ground level, as if they were never meant to be seen by the people who made them. And that is where the mystery begins. Were the Nazca Lines a sacred masterpiece written onto the land by an ancient civilization? Or were they something stranger, markers, signals, or landing paths for beings beyond our world? In one of the harshest landscapes on Earth, an ancient message still waits, and it may be far bigger than history ever imagined. At first glance, the Nazca Desert does not look like the kind of place that should hold one of humanity's greatest mysteries. It looks empty, hostile, burned by centuries of sun and stripped of mercy by wind. But then the camera rises. The barren ground begins to transform. Straight lines slash across the earth for miles. Giant trapezoids unfold like silent highways. And suddenly, out of the dust, impossible figures appear: a monkey, a condor, a spider, a hummingbird, each one so enormous that the human mind struggles to accept what it is seeing. This was not a sketch on stone. This was art on the scale of landscape itself. And the most unsettling part is this: many of these designs can only truly be seen from above, as though their creators were thinking in a perspective no ordinary human should have possessed 2,000 years ago. The first people to glimpse their full scale did not come from the ancient world. They came from the modern sky. In the 20th century, as pilots flew over southern Peru, they looked down and saw the desert revealing secrets it had hidden for centuries. What they found did not behave like ruins. These were not temples rising from the sand. They were absences, dark stones carefully removed to expose lighter earth beneath, forming images so precise that they survived across generations in a place where almost nothing survives by accident. Some lines run arrow straight over vast distances, ignoring hills and contours as if geometry itself had been imposed on the desert. The immediate question was irresistible: how had an ancient people created designs of such colossal scale without seeing them the way we see them now? And if these were meant for gods above, what exactly were they trying to say? As researchers moved closer, the mystery only deepened. Archaeologists linked the lines to the Nazca culture, a civilization that flourished in this region long before the Inca, between roughly 200 BC and 600 CE. They found pottery, textiles, burial sites, and ritual spaces. They found evidence of a people capable of extraordinary artistic skill and sophisticated symbolic thought. But the lines refused to become ordinary. Some seemed ceremonial. Some appeared astronomical. Others looked like pathways worn by repeated movement, suggesting processions, rituals, or acts of devotion. Yet the desert kept resisting every simple explanation. Why create giant animals no one on the ground could fully see? Why carve vast geometric forms into a lifeless plane where almost no one lived permanently? And why do some of the shapes resemble runways so strongly that even modern eyes instinctively connect them to machines? That question, once spoken, changed everything. Because the Nazca Lines did not enter modern imagination merely as an archaeological puzzle. They became something larger, stranger, and far more seductive, a battlefield between science and myth. To some, they were the supreme proof of human imagination, a masterpiece of ritual art, cosmology, and engineering. To others, they hinted at contact, intervention, or guidance from something not entirely human. Books, documentaries, and theories poured fuel onto the mystery, turning the desert into a stage where ancient civilization and extraterrestrial fantasy collided. But beneath all the speculation lies a deeper reason this place still grips us. The Nazca Lines challenge one of our most comforting assumptions: that the ancient world was small, limited, and easy to explain. Standing over these immense designs, that belief begins to collapse. And in the silence of the Peruvian desert, one impossible question still waits. If these lines were not made to be seen by us, then who were they really for all? If the Nazca Lines were only random scratches in the earth, the mystery would have died long ago. Instead, the more scientists studied them, the more deliberate they seemed. These geoglyphs were created by removing the dark, iron-oxidized stones that covered the desert surface, exposing the lighter soil beneath. It was a simple method, but in this landscape, simplicity became permanence. Because the Nazca Desert is one of the driest places on Earth, with little rain and almost no strong erosion, the lines endured for centuries like scars that refused to heal. What looked impossible from the sky was, on the ground, an act of careful subtraction. Yet that explanation solved only the method. It did not solve the vision behind it. How did people without aircraft design images hundreds of feet long with such astonishing control? The answer may be less supernatural, but no less impressive: stakes, ropes, grids, and a level of planning that feels shockingly modern. Archaeologists believe the Nazca people scaled up small drawings using measured lines and reference points, much like an artist enlarging a sketch onto a wall. Wooden stakes discovered at some sites suggest surveying techniques precise enough to map vast forms across open terrain. In experiments, modern researchers have reproduced similar figures using only simple tools, proving that flight was not required. But replication is not the same as understanding. A technique explains how the lines were made, not why so much labor was poured into making them. This is where the desert begins speaking in symbols. Many researchers now believe the lines were tied to ritual movement. Some were not merely pictures to be viewed, but paths to be walked. Imagine priests and pilgrims crossing these giant designs under a burning sky, performing ceremonies in a land where water meant survival and drought meant death. In that context, the shapes may have been offerings to divine forces, appeals written onto the earth itself. That idea becomes even more powerful when placed beside the Nazca world. This was a civilization living in an unforgiving environment, surrounded by one of the harshest deserts on the planet. Yet beneath that dryness, they engineered aqueduct systems, known as puquios, to tap underground water and sustain life. Water was not just practical. It was sacred. Some scholars think the lines pointed toward water sources, mirrored constellations, or marked ceremonial routes connected to fertility, rain, and cosmic order. The animals may have symbolized powers in the spiritual universe: the hummingbird as messenger, the monkey as vitality, the spider as fertility and rain. What appears from modern altitude as abstract design may once have been part of a living ritual landscape, where astronomy, religion, environment, and survival were fused into one. In other words, the Nazca lines may not have been a message to aliens at all. They may have been a desperate and beautiful negotiation with nature itself. And yet, just when the puzzle seems to settle, it breaks open again. Because not all the lines fit neatly into one explanation. Some figures overlap older ones, suggesting centuries of changing purpose. Some trapezoids and long straight corridors feel less like symbolic animals and more like monumental zones of activity. Then came the modern discoveries. Drones, aerial photography, and artificial intelligence began identifying new geoglyphs that had escaped the human eye for generations. Suddenly, the Nazca world became larger than anyone realized. More lines. More figures. More layers of intention. The deeper researchers looked, the less this desert resembled a single artwork and the more it resembled an evolving archive of belief, ritual, and power. What once seemed like one mystery became many. And that twist is the most unsettling of all. We are not standing before one solved enigma from the ancient past. We are standing at the edge of a lost system of thought we have only just begun to see clearly. What makes the Nazca lines truly haunting is not just that they survived. It is that they force us to confront how fragile our understanding of intelligence really is. For generations, the modern world looked at ancient civilizations through a lens of quiet arrogance. We assumed that without metal machines, satellites, or aircraft, human imagination must also have been limited. But the Nazca Desert shatters that illusion. Here, an ancient people transformed an entire landscape into a system of symbols so vast that it waited for the age of flight to reveal itself fully. That fact alone is staggering. It means the people of Nazca were not thinking only in terms of what a single person could see with their eyes. They were thinking beyond immediate vision, beyond the scale of the body, almost beyond time itself. And that changes the question. Perhaps the real mystery was never whether aliens visited this desert. Perhaps the deeper mystery is why human beings are so quick to deny the genius of those who came before us. Still, the alien theory refuses to die, and that says something important about us. Because the image is irresistible, giant runway-like strips, immense figures only visible from the sky, a civilization leaving messages in a place that feels closer to another planet than to ordinary Earth. The theory persists not because it is well supported by evidence, but because it dramatizes a fear and a hope buried deep in human psychology. The fear is that ancient humanity could not possibly have achieved something so visionary alone. The hope is that we are not the only intelligence that has ever looked down on this world. In that sense, the Nazca Lines have become more than archaeology. They have become a mirror for modern longing. We project onto them our fascination with contact, our hunger for cosmic meaning, and our discomfort with mysteries that remain stubbornly human. The desert stays silent, while we fill that silence with our own obsessions. But there is another implication, and it may be even more unsettling. The lines are fragile. Tire tracks, urban expansion, illegal encroachment, climate shifts, and human negligence have already scarred parts of this ancient landscape. A truck once crossed protected ground. Roads have cut near sacred designs. What survived 2,000 years of desert isolation can be damaged in moments by modern carelessness. And that gives the mystery a new urgency. This is no longer only a story about the past. It is a story about whether the modern world is capable of protecting meanings it does not fully understand. Every geoglyph lost is not just a damaged artifact. It is a sentence erased from a text humanity still cannot completely read. We often imagine history as something secure, locked behind museum glass. But the Nazca Lines remind us that history lies exposed under open sky, vulnerable to the very civilization that claims to value it most. In the end, the greatest power of the Nazca Lines may be this: they expand as we do. To a pilgrim, they may have been sacred pathways. To an archaeologist, a ritual map of survival. To a dreamer, evidence of visitors from the stars. To humanity as a whole, they are something rarer, a threshold where art, science, myth, and existential wonder meet. They remind us that meaning does not vanish just because certainty does. Some places are powerful precisely because they refuse to be reduced to one answer. And perhaps that is why the Nazca Desert still pulls us in. Not because it proves aliens came. Not because it offers an easy solution. But because in those vast silent lines, carved between mountain and sky, humanity left behind a question large enough to outlive empires. We call them drawings, runways, symbols, or rituals. But maybe they are something even more enduring, proof that long before we could fly, we were already trying to speak to the heavens,